Welcome back, everybody. I have a distinct pleasure of speaking to yet another Canadian actors. I love Canada. Yay, Canada. By the way, I've noticed that people are starting to say that I sound like I'm Canadian now because I've noticed myself that when I'm saying sorry, I almost did it, but it starts sounding with the Canadian pronunciation. So I think more than a third of the people that I've interviewed are either from Toronto or Vancouver. So please welcome another one who actually represents kind of both Toronto and Vancouver,
Yes.
Hamza Fouad.
Thank you again for having me, Alan. Absolute pleasure. And I can see the slight Canadianisms in the way that you speak, which is great. Where are you from? You're in Chicago. Were you always there?
No, no, I immigrated from Ukraine when I was a kid. I was 14 when I came,
Nice.
and yeah, I've never, I've been to Canada many times, but I've been told like, are you Canadian? Nope.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
used to work for a Canadian company for a number of years. Cognos was the Canadian company. IBM purchased it a while ago. They were based in Ottawa. I think they still have quite a big presence in Ottawa. So I spent a lot of time with that company, not in Ottawa, but people made assumptions that I'm Canadian. And now,
No, it's
as I've
because you're polite, my friend. It's because you got good energy. Anyone who's got
oh,
good energy is polite, says they're sorries the way that we do, you're Canadian instantly.
and I love Canadian shows. Kim's Convenience is one of my favorite
Oh,
comedies.
mama. Oh yeah.
I love Schitt's Creek, so I might as well be Canadian. I'll certainly take that honorably.
There is space for you up here whenever you decide to move on up.
Thank you. And a lot of my shows, my favorite shows, are shot in Canada or were shot in Canada,
Yeah.
and you get to be a part of it, especially in Vancouver. I love it. And
Yeah.
let's talk about one of those. Now it's on Hulu. October 16th is when it came out. I hope everybody is checking it out. Another Marvel Universe edition. It's Helstrom.
Yes,
So
yeah.
you're recurring on Helstrom, is that correct?
That is correct. I get a couple fun episodes in their 10 episode arc.
Very nice. I think three is so far what's shown on IMDb. So
That is
hopefully you're in a bunch more there.
correct.
Um, how's the show been going? It's I'll gladly well gladly for those people who care about it. I'm sorry, but horror is not my genre. I love Marvel. Horror is not me. I'm having enough a hard of a time watching Westworld, which is not
No,
horror,
no.
but just that suspense and some of the things that's like probably my level that I don't want to cross.
Yeah.
So I've watched the trailers for Hellstrom. It looks really interesting
Yeah.
in terms of a cool family drama,
Yeah.
but the horror stuff just I
Not
have
for
enough
me.
drama already.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we just passed spooky season, October. It came out at the perfect time for people that are fans of the horror genre and the thriller genre to give it a shot. So I love it. I personally love horror. I've loved horror since my earliest memories. And I love the genre so much too because they never stop coming up with fresh and original ways to scare you. I recently went to go see the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the drive-in theater, Twilight Theater here in Vancouver.
Yep.
And this is a film that came out in like the 80s, and it was revolutionary in the way and the things that it was doing when it first came out. And then I saw it for the first time here in 2020, and it did not translate at all for me. I was watching it and I was laughing. It was comical to me for the most part. I mean, there was a 10-minute scene where the lead was running around trying to avoid the Texas Chainsaw guy, and he's barely catching up to her and just missing her. And she's just screaming hysterically, and that lasted for 10 minutes. I kid you not. So
Wow.
horror has come such a long way with what we first got to see, sort of in the 80s, with all the really classic horror genre movies that came out, and then now you fast forward to 2020 and you see things like Helstrom that comes out, and it's very deliberate with their scares, and they're very um, back in the day it was we want to show you everything, we want to make it as real as possible and keep the camera just rolling, whereas
Yeah.
now I think it's more deliberate. It's we're going to build up the anticipation, we're going to build up the suspense, and then something's going to hit you, but it's not going to hit you when you think it's going to hit you. It's going to hit you when you least expect it, and that's what I love about horror.
And that's the part that freaks me out the most. So they're doing a great job. Just that's one of the reasons why I don't go there.
Yeah.
Um, it's true. You know, Arachnophobia still is fresh in my mind,
It's
and
such a classic film.
I know, man. I'm a chicken. You know what? I'm scared of spiders and snakes and gators and
I have
sharks and.
I have an interesting story about arachnophobia that I'll bore you with real quick. But that movie has, I think, affected me with some sort of phobia, not with spiders, but
Okay.
with bubbles and dots. Now,
Ooh.
if I see a bunch of bubbles really close together, or a bunch of dots, or if I see like 100,000 ants just walking together, even thinking about it makes me itchy, and I'll constantly just start itching and try and get it out of my head. I got that because when I was young and I watched Arachnophobia for the first time,
Yeah.
they weren't about radioactive spiders. They were about scary, poisonous spiders. And then when they would bite you, you would look down to where they bit you, and your arm would almost turn into like oatmeal, right?
Yeah.
That was the effect that they used, and then you would die. And I would look at that as a kid, and it creeped me out so much, and it's followed me into my adulthood, just as a random arachnophobia fact.
I'm very sorry about that. Do you eat oatmeal? Do you take
Dude,
bubble baths,
dude.
or those things are
Um,
awful people?
I mean, yeah. I mean, bubbles are in my life quite a bit, but you just kind of learn to live with it. I've learned to live
Oh,
with this horrible, horrible affection.
this is, you know, the reason why I prefer a pool to open water is because
Mm.
I'm still afraid of sharks. So like these movies did a number on me. I don't want any more things that freak me out.
Yeah.
Uh, what I found fascinating, kind of doing my research on you, is that from an acting perspective, as an actor, by the way, I would love to be in a horror film because I think that would be fun. I just,
Right.
you know, wouldn't want to be surprised as a viewer. As an actor who knows what's coming, that would be fun. Uh, what was it like for you as an actor, especially knowing that you love horror?
It was honestly a dream come true. I adored it. Just the fact that I got it. It was I've worked in the horror genre before. I had done a movie maybe 5 years ago called Bed of the Dead, and it was a fun indie I shot over in Toronto, and that was great. And that one was more they were looking for sort of gruesome than anything else, and I learned a lot being on there, and it just in a different appreciation for horror. And then working on Helstrom, I got to see all of that, but just on a way bigger scale. Because it's Marvel, the budget is feels like unlimited,
Yeah.
and they can get very creative with some of the things that they get to do. So I just loved it. I'm just a kid in a candy shop every time I got to be on set there.
That's very cool. Now, because it's Marvel is very secretive. So
Hmm.
I found it really interesting from an acting perspective that when they gave you stuff, they didn't give you much. They basically give you your sides and that's it. What was it
Yeah.
like as an actor, you know, trying to make choices and get into the specifics of the role, not knowing much at all?
Well, it forces you to get confident in your choices, and it reminds you all the things you've learned in theater school with script analysis and finding the arc of the scene and picking up on the specific beats. And these are things you don't really think about. When I've been in the industry for over a decade now, and that's always been things that I've practiced and I've kept going just subconsciously, not paying attention. It's muscle memory now. But when it comes to here's a scene and it's just your scene. You have no idea what's going on in the rest of the show for this episode, for the rest of the episodes. I would show up on set and I would make strong choices and I would believe this is what I went off of the audition process. In the
Mm.
audition process, they were very specific in the type of man that Derek Jackson, my character, was. So I kept that always in the back of my head and let that guide the choices that I made. So when I got on set, I would sit down with the writers. We'd go back and forth with our ideas. I'd let them know kind of where I was going with it. And luckily, it was along the same vision they had for the character as well. So it worked out really great. And I left at the end of it with newfound confidence in just the choices that we make as performers and artists. And I believe if it's a strong choice and you're malleable and you're able to take feedback and be able to tweak it in the ways that's best for the script, then they can put you in any situation, you'll make it work.
Yeah, and I remember, you know, one of the wonderful actors that was on my show was talking about character values, right? The first thing you have to discover is the values of your character, and that'll drive everything else. And I never kind of thought of it that way, and now I can think of anything differently
Yeah.
because once you know what a value set is, that'll influence the choices. I keep going
100%.
back to House of Cards, and
Great
the
show.
value. Huh?
Great show.
It's an amazing show from an acting perspective. Again, not my kind of energy. It's way too depressing for me because I love people and I'm a good person. But when you realize that his value set is he does not believe in afterlife, he does not believe in God, he believes in whatever he can do to make this particular life count the best
Right.
for him as possible, then all of the choices and being able to kill other people or set them up, that makes perfect sense. So
Right.
once you get in touch with that value system, that'll drive you. So I think from your perspective in the audition, they kind of told you that Derek is a family man, Derek is soft-spoken, big heart, kind of the value structures and characteristics that made it easier, I think.
I 100% agree. Yeah.
Yeah. Very, very cool. Now, again, kind of dealing with Derek does not have any powers from what I understand. Some people around him do. So, do you get to be in any scenes where the actor that you're working with has powers and Derek has to kind of react to it and be in that world?
Well, without giving too much away for those who haven't seen it, I can tell you that I don't have any powers. I can
Okay.
also tell you that I'm not aware of the supernatural elements of the world that we're in, at least in the beginning of the show.
Okay.
Which is funny because I play a detective and I play a cop. And I'm seeing I have a very close relationship. I have a relationship with Chris Yen's character in the show.
Mhm.
And he has an entire arc that deals with the paranormal, that deals with kind of being the fixer per se. Of
Mhm.
anytime Anna does something, he's the one says something that shouldn't have been done. He's got to clean it all up. So this is constantly happening around me, and I have no idea. So I think it's a refreshing take to have this sort of paranormal, super normal
Yeah.
world, and have that one character that it's happening around, and he has to sort of navigate it and try to make sense of why his partner is acting the way that he is, why
Right.
his relationship dynamic with his best friend is the way that it is, and be able to move accordingly. So
Yeah. Well, again, it needs to be any show, especially a supernatural one, needs to be in a some sort of grounding. So,
yeah,
perhaps Derek is the grounding for the show, which was be cool.
it was a very cool experience.
Very nice. All right. I know you've been on a ton of other shows. Again, being in Vancouver, you get a chance to be on the whole Arrowverse and Supergirl and all of the other stuff, which is awesome. And then you've done some Hallmark. I think I've seen 2 Hallmark movies on your IMDb profile. So kind of going in and out. And I know you're a fan of Marvel and you're a fan of comics. I think Arrow. I think you did Arrow before you did Supergirl.
I did.
So what was that like? Because I really enjoy the whole Arrowverse. What was it like walking in? I know myself, I would be a fanboy and I'd need to really desperately try to put that away to actually do my job as a professional. But what was
Right.
it like for you?
For me, I think it is a good mix of both. I'm a
Okay.
fanboy in the sense of I appreciate the fact that I'm in this universe. You
Yeah.
know, I never read the Arrow comics by any means, but I've watched all of the shows. I've watched
Right.
all of the movies growing up, so I was very familiar with the character and how cool he was. I also love Supergirl just because Superman was one of my favorites, if not my favorite superhero when I was young. So just learning about his cousin, and she's become Supergirl, and I love that. And there's that base knowledge and base appreciation for being allowed into this world. But once you're there, it's like a job like any other, really. You just kind of gotta show up and put your best foot forward and try not to geek out too hard.
Yeah, I'm not sure. That could be a problem for me, but I'll. The only thing that I could judge is based on the people that I've had on the show, and knowing that I have a certain person coming on that I've been watching for 20 years and I love them and everything, I'm able to put all of that away and just, conduct myself normally and then geek out later. So I'm hoping that, if I get on that type of set, it would be similar, but I'm not sure.
Who knows? Who knows? I had a great experience with a lady by the name of Loretta Devine.
Okay.
Now I've watched Loretta Devine my whole life growing up. She was in, Waiting to Excel. She was in the original Broadway version of Dreamgirl. She's been in just so many important films that I had watched growing up as a child. And she got to play my mom in a film called The Sweet Christmas Romance, which was a Lifetime film, if I'm not mistaken. And I was looking, I got to just work for a couple of weeks with this woman that I pretty much idolized my entire life. And in my home right now is literally a picture of us framed. Like that's how big of a deal it was to me. But you almost have to turn that off to a certain extent when you're on set. Because I could just imagine the last thing they would want is some like geeky, person fawning over them all the time. But also finding the fine balance of, just being real. Look, I told her right when I met her, I've watched you growing up. My mother can't believe I'm on set with you right now. You get to play my mom. She's a little jealous.
Yeah.
Thank you for your work and the way that you've inspired me growing up. And I'm really excited to work with you for the next few weeks. And then once you kind of get that out of the way, you get to just be peers, which I think is the underlying current for everything that we do. We just have to remember that it's a surreal experience to be in a film with someone like that. But at the same time, it made me kind of reflect on how far that I've gotten to come. And now I get to work with someone that I've gotten to watch even before I knew I wanted to be an actor, which was brilliant. It was amazing.
That's amazing. And then kind of going back to something that you did before you got into acting, you were a motivational speaker, which as somebody who is a motivational speaker, also I love that about you.
That's great.
But now it gives you an opportunity to add so much more when eventually you'll get back to it, and I'm sure you're going to be doing some part of it moving forward. It gives you even more stories to share to help and motivate the kids.
Something that I learned early on in theater school is that interesting people make interesting artists. And you can spend all the time in the world in class and learning and on stage and doing all that stuff. But if you don't acquire any interest, it won't fill these roles that you're doing. So when I worked at Free the Children as a motivational speaker, I'd fallen into that job. It was a complete accident. I was never looking for it. I had no interest in speaking. I had no interest in working with children, or not children, with youth. And I had no idea about the organization. Something that I was really passionate about in my late teens, early 20s was spoken word poetry. And I started doing spoken word poetry as a way to mitigate the nerves that I was feeling on stage. So I was just starting getting into theater school. Every time I did a play or anytime I did a scene, I would get what I call hand tingles. At the end of that experience, I would just be so amped and so charged, and a very unique experience that I wasn't able to feel anywhere else. So I started looking for that experience. And what I realized is when you're on stage and you get to perform spoken word poetry, for 3 minutes and 10 seconds, you have everyone's undivided attention. And you have a power to say whatever you want, and they have no choice but to listen. So you have an opportunity to either waste everyone's time or say something worth saying that has a little bit of substance, to maybe make them laugh, to make them think, to make them cry, whatever it is. And I loved it, and I absolutely loved it. So I had moved to Toronto in my early 20s, and I didn't know anyone. It was the middle of the winter. I was working at some cafe. I'm just trying to make something of myself in the city. I know I'm going to pursue acting out there. It's hard to find an agent at first, but I fall into the poetry world, and I start performing, and I start doing well. And someone in the audience in one of the shows I was performing in had noticed me, and I had won that competition that night. And they approached me and said, "Hey, look, I work for this organization. We're speakers. We get to travel the world. We get to inspire youth." And honestly, I thought it was fake. I was like, "Yeah, I'm not buying what you're selling. This doesn't seem like a career. I'm not interested. Leave me alone." A few weeks later, she tracked me down on Facebook and sent me a follow-up message. She's like, "Look, we'd really love to see you." So I come in, I go in for the interview process, and this is a room filled with people that are right for the job. You know, they learn. Yeah, we learn a little bit about each other, and they're like, "Hey, my name is so and so, and I just finished teaching kids in Yemen how to read for the first time, and I'm so and so, and I've been a teacher for this many years, and I've traveled here, and I used to help build schools for la da da da." And then you got me. I'm like, "Hey guys, I'm Hamza Fouad. I'm an actor. I'm a poet, and I'm real happy to be here." And out of everyone, it was a group interview. Out of everybody, it was only 2 people in that group interview that were hired. It was myself and another artist by the name of DJ Demers, who's an amazing stand-up comedian who everybody needs to check out. So if you're listening to this, DJ Demers, you'll die laughing. So him and I were the only 2 that got hired. And DJ was a comedian. He had no background in this world at all. So they hire a comedian, they hire an actor. And it just goes to show that just the type of, they really invested in the right people versus all the experience. I'd never worked with kids before. I'd never been a speaker before, but I'm an actor. So I know what it's like to be on stage. I know what it's like to try and inspire and compel people, especially as a poet. So that I fell into that job. And one of the main reasons why I took it was because I wanted to acquire interest. And back to my point, interesting people make interesting artists. So I put acting on the back burner for about 5 years. I got to travel the world. I got to inspire some people. I've spoken to over 100,000 youth, did some amazing workshops, met some of my best friends. And then it got to a point where 5 years pass and it's, do we keep moving up within the organization or do we put it away, acquire all the interest, take all the lessons, and then see if we can go back to the original game plan, which is telling stories. So yeah, it's been a very amazing, pivotal moment in my life that I do not regret. Because there's a lot of times, and a lot of times artists, what we do is we get caught up comparing, we get caught up wishing things were different. And for a little while, I could catch myself thinking, well, those 5 years that I wasn't acting, look at these guys I went to theater school with. Look what they've got to do in the last 5 years of being dedicated and focused and grinding. They're already here. And I'm over here now and I got to catch up. Man, was it worth it to do all that? And then you sit in it and you realize, yeah, 100,000%. Because if you're in it for the right reasons and you work hard and you keep developing yourself and your craft, you'll end up wherever you want to end up. So yeah.
That's very cool. Do you still write poetry? Do you want to share any of it? I'm a poet. So
you know, I'm good. You can find some stuff online, I'm sure, but no, it's something that I still hold very near and dear to my heart. However, I haven't written in a while. I need to have a purpose too, I feel right now, where it's, if somebody reaches out and asks me to perform for a show or do something like that, which they still do from time to time, then I'll hit, pen to pad. But until then, it's just focusing on acting and running around in this crazy world, trying to stay sane.
No, I got you. Last few things as we wrap up, and I really enjoyed getting to know you. I know the audience does as well.
I appreciate that.
If I may put you on a fun spot, just because you've been a part of both. So DC or Marvel?
I'm gonna go Marvel because I'm on a Marvel show and it's a great comic book. Not only that though, but genuinely, I grew up with both, but Marvel has always been the one that I feel has knocked it out of the park, especially in the cinematic universe. DC's kind of getting their shit together now. They did amazing with the Dark Knight series. Aquaman was a huge success. Wonder Woman was amazing. And I think they're slowly but surely finding their way back into the right stride of things. But Marvel has been the archetype from day one. They have the blueprint sorted. Spider-Man changed my life. Iron Man changed my life. Growing up, I think my favorite comic book superhero is the Hulk. And Marvel is just absolutely next level for me. So I'm going Marvel.
I got you. Me personally, I think I love what DC has done on television, and Wonder Woman is still probably my favorite superhero movie.
Nice.
But Marvel has more of the characters that I like and I identify with, and blown things out of the water in terms of the MCU. It's I agree. I'd pick Marvel as well, not
Nice.
just because you're currently on the Marvel show. And then finally, if you had a chance to play any superhero, past, present, or any future project, which one would that be?
I was asked that on a previous show a couple weeks ago, and my answer is going to stay the same. And I'm going to keep putting it out there in the universe, and hopefully one day an opportunity comes around. But I've always wanted to play Blade.
Yep.
I've loved Blade. I've been a huge fan of the occult and vampirism and werewolves and that whole genre of storytelling. And
Yep.
Blade was one of the first, if not, Blade was the first time I got to see a black man as a lead in a film that dealt with things that I loved. I love vampires. I love, all of that, the myths and the lore behind it. And I got to see Wesley Snipes, a guy that looked like me, dominate and crush that role. And as much as we give Deadpool all the love and respect, it wasn't the first R-rated film to be a massive success and a blockbuster. It was Blade. Blade was the original. It opened up a lot of doors for opportunities for minority actors. I know that Wesley Snipes has been one of the forefront actors, but he also just absolutely crushed it. And I love the story of the Daywalker. The guy that his mom got bit by a vampire right before giving birth to him. So now he has the perks of being vampire and human. He has none of their weaknesses, all of their strengths, except for the thirst. It's just a compelling character to play, and I've always dreamed of just having anything to do with that world. So yeah, I would pick Blade.
Very cool. Yeah, big fan of Wesley. Kind of grew up watching him. He's a martial artist, so that was also a huge part of why I loved watching him, because I'm a huge fan of martial arts too. So
Mahershala Ali is going to be playing the next Blade in the franchise, huh?
He's amazing. I talk about
Oscar. Are you kidding me?
No, he's I literally, I'm not sure that I've seen him in anything that I wasn't just glued to his performances. He's next level stuff.
He's phenomenal.
Listen, keeping my fingers crossed, maybe an opportunity comes your way. But yeah, I think
I'll play his younger brother. I don't care. Just get me on that movie.
I got you. Well, thank you so much, Hamza. It's a real pleasure. Best of luck with the show. I hope people enjoy it. I hope it finds its audience, because the idea is good, and it should be a fun thing to do.
Thank you again for your time, and congratulations on your 120th show in the last 6 months. That's unheard of. You've been grinding and killing it, and I appreciate your time, and every one of your listeners appreciates this show, because it just inspires inspiration. It inspires inspiration. Inspires inspiration. I like that.
I like, yeah, we'll go with it. And thanks to everybody who brings me inspiration for continuing to do that show, for tuning in and watching another episode of The Love of Acting. We thank you, whether you are in Canada, whether you are in the United States, or I think now we're getting close to like 70 countries that watch the show, which humbles me.
Everyone.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. And we really, really, really appreciate it. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you so much, brother. Appreciate it.